Hello and welcome to Walking in Victory. This is your host, Sean Reno, and today I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Maybe I'm getting away from my current intro and more just diving deep right into it. I've been resting today and taking a Sabbath, and I'm starting to understand the importance of Sabbath rest and how God has designed Sabbath rest into the fabric of all creation, because we need rest. We are not robots, we are humans, we are souls, and when we don't rest, we get anxious, we get restless, we get out of alignment. And today's episode is just another important reminder of the importance of Sabbath rest and being intentional with our schedules. I kind of stumbled upon rest today, honestly. I wasn't actually intentional with what I was going to do on a Saturday, which was actually a good thing because it led me down the path of rest. And just reflecting and being able to read the scriptures on how good it is for the soul, I'm just refreshed and thankful right now just to be able to share this and talk about this topic with you. And so, I just want to talk about how a couple things have crossed my mind. And one thing is that it's hard to worship God when you're tired. You know what? Worshiping God is intentional and requires some energy and intention, and when you don't have that rest for your soul, when your body is physically drained, it does make it hard to worship Jesus. And so what the enemy likes to do is he likes to get us super busy so that we aren't even physically capable of worshiping God with 100% reverence as we should be. Another thing to think about is that it's hard to love people when you're tired. When we're irritable and cranky, and then somebody says something that triggers us, we're way more susceptible to fire back with a response, or to be short or quick with others. And this could even be the people that we care about, let alone people that we don't like. And Jesus calls us higher. He calls us to not just love the people that love us back, but to even love our enemies. And how is this possible when we're tired? Studies show that when people are fatigued and tired, they usually dabble in things that are destructive. We usually are way more susceptible to stress and anxiety. And so this culture that we live in, this go, 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 where busyness is like a badge of honor and a sign of status, we forget about rest. But then we look at our lives and we realize that maybe our relationships are falling apart, or maybe we're just getting sick all the time, or we're not operating in peace and joy, but rather anger and frustration. And the intentionality of having a Sabbath day to just sit and stop and turn off the phone and turn off the emails, it's something that's foreign and actually goes against the grain of who we are. Because a lot of us put our identity in our performance. and what we produce. And if we're not producing, we see ourselves as invaluable, that we're not valuable. And that's the practice of Sabbath, is saying, I surrender. I put my trust in Jesus that He will provide for my needs, and that my identity isn't actually in what I produce, but it's whose I am. I am a child of God, and children of God take time with their Father and spend time with their Father to rest and to delight in Him. And so we think about Sabbath rest, and we think about the book of Genesis, and we know that in 6 days God created the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day He rested, and He sanctified it and made it holy. Now God rested. God rested. And we are human. We are fallible. We are mortal. And yet we don't think that we need to rest, yet God Himself rested on the seventh day. Now God never gets tired, but God is intentional. And He stopped, and He delighted, and He rested in everything that He made in creation. And because we are made in His image, we also must do the same. Now, even the Sabbath day is a commandment, one of the 10 commandments, and it could be one where we overlook and say that's not relevant anymore, but I would say that if you ignore that commandment, you're going against the grain and the rhythm and the fabric of how God created the universe and how He created man. The Sabbath is for man, not man for Sabbath. And so when we decide to do things our own way and try to get things done, to be more productive, to be more efficient, and ignore that our bodies are falling apart, we will run into chaos. And so Sabbath is just another reminder that us humans need to rest and trust in God's ways rather than our own ways. It's a time for refreshment. In the Old Testament, the Sabbath was a commandment, a day set apart, and it provided much needed opportunity for physical, emotional, and spiritual refreshment. And so we go to the New Testament and we see that Jesus says He is Lord of the Sabbath, and we see that He even healed on the Sabbath day. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. The rest that Jesus offers is more than just physical rest, but a deep soul-level rejuvenation that comes from being in His presence. Throughout His ministry, Jesus performed miracles on the Sabbath, healing the sick, restoring sight to the blind, and setting the oppressed free. In doing this, He demonstrated that the true purpose of Sabbath is to bring healing and liberation. Jesus confronted the legalistic interpretations that had burdened the Sabbath and showed that acts of mercy and compassion should never be hindered by religious regulations. So when someone is burdening you more and more to do something on a Sabbath day, or you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, we're saying that no, Jesus is the one who showed the example of what Sabbath should be like, which is a day to be set free, to see the face of God, and to invite healing and restoration into our own lives on a deep soul level. It's not supposed to be a burdensome obligation, but something that is a delightful commandment and it's meant to bring us joy. When we set aside time for rest and worship, we declare our trust in God's provision and acknowledge our need for His grace. It's just a way to cultivate intimacy with our Heavenly Father. It's another time to detach from our distractions of the world. Everything that's demanding our energy and our attention, we can put down to the side. And we could say, no, our priority is actually rest and seeing His face and just sulking and receiving the love of God and doing nothing. It's a way to restore balance into our life. In this world, we see that things are constantly demanding our energy and attention. And it reminds us that, like I said earlier, that our worth isn't in our productivity. It's in our beloved identity as children of God. So we see how important it is. And I think it's like, I don't know, I saw this diagram and this example of like, if our energy levels were like our phone battery, a lot of us tend to operate at 20-30% of our capacity. And when we rest, maybe we rest and get back to 60%, which is just enough to get us by, rather than resting till we're 100% full and satisfied. And so take time sometimes just to gauge where you're at and say, like, you know what, today I feel like I'm at 50%. I need to do things that are going to get me back to a place where I can operate at my full capacity. And we have 6 days to work and to grind and to get things done. But if we're not even taking one day to reset, how can we ever truly, fully rest? We're not robots. And that's what sin does. It always degrades humanity, and we see ourselves as more as just producers and robots rather than souls and beings who need rest and who need love. And so we got to think about that. We got to reflect and remember. And we can never reflect and remember when we're busy. All we can think about is actually the future and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing we have to get done. And there's always going to be a next thing to get done. So what are you in a rush for to get done? Why are you rushing around? There's that saying, work smarter, not harder. Are you working harder or smarter? And if you're not taking a day to Sabbath rest, ask yourself, what is hindering me from that? What is stopping me from resting and reflecting? And what are the barriers that I need to remove to have Sabbath rest a part of my weekly rhythm and a part of my lifestyle? It's a practice. Just like exercise is a practice and a lifestyle. I mean, if I only exercise for 3 months and then I stop, I'm going to lose everything that I gained. Sabbath rest should be a lifestyle, a weekly lifestyle that we as believers practice, so that when we can be rejuvenated, we could come into our workspaces as a light and to glorify the Lord, and to have our face shine like bright lights and smile at people because we have been restored with intimacy from Jesus and from God our Father. Practicing Sabbath looks different from everybody. For some people, maybe it's playing a game of golf, or for others, it could be cleaning the house. But some things you can think about are sleeping, obviously, taking a nap, singing, dancing, blessing somebody else, taking a walk, reading, or spending alone time with the Father. Sometimes it's even for me, it's just watching a baseball game and not leaving the house. It could be eating a planned meal and taking delight in a meal. And whatever that looks like for you, you should practice that. If you like hanging out with friends and family, you should be intentional with setting time for that. And really what Sabbath rest does is it gives us a time to practice being intentional. When we forget about being intentional, we kind of just coast along and let the world guide us rather than letting Jesus guide us. So we need to stop, we have to rest, we have to delight, and we have to worship. We have to remember that God Himself rested on the seventh day and delighted in His creation. When you can operate at 75% and above capacity, you are operating in the fruit of the Spirit, which is joy, love, peace, gentleness, self-control, kindness. We were designed to operate in the fruit of the Spirit. And when we are tired and not nourished, we operate in the lust of the flesh, and we don't want to be doing that. If you're not practicing Sabbath, what is the barriers that are getting in your way to do so? So my encouragement to you is to stop, to rest, to delight, to worship, and just take inventory of your life, an inventory of your emotional health, of your spiritual health, of your physical health, and say, if I'm not where I need to be, how do I get there? And the first thing to do is just stop. Journal, phone a friend, ask for help. But my encouragement and my hope for you is that you would find time to rest with Jesus and to know that this is His design and His heart for you. And isn't that satisfying? Isn't that just make you have a heart of gratitude to know, hey, I have freedom to stop. I have freedom to actually lay down on the couch. I have freedom to do what I love that brings me rest, to read, to take pictures, to hang out with friends. This is what God designed us for. And so my encouragement is live the way that God designed you to be, and you will flourish. Thank you so much for listening to Walking in Victory. I pray this blesses your day, and I'll talk to you soon.